So hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Allison Dennis. I serve as Executive Director for the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology. Welcome to this special Earth Day Show and Tell event featuring the work of 5 art and ecology inspired practitioners who have been living and working in residence at Sitka this spring. We want to thank the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation and Jordan Schnitzer for their extraordinary signature sponsorship of Sitka's 50th anniversary year, which completes in May when we turn 51. So thank you so much, Jordan and Care Foundation. When they originally made that gift, we had no idea what kind of year 2020 was going to be. So it couldn't have been more impactful. We're so grateful. Thank you to all of our generous sponsors and foundations who make our work possible, including the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Robert and Mercedes Eichholz Foundation, Oregon Arts Commission, Oregon Cultural Trust, Explore Lincoln City, Framing Resource, Brian Potter Design, Park Lane Suites, and Siltstone Wines. We want to thank Sitka's co-founders, Jane and Frank Boyden, for their perennial inspiration to all of us at Sitka. I have an upcoming event to announce. So on May 27th, just like this, Sitka will host Intisar Abioto for an online artist talk. Intisar is going to be addressing her work, musings, concerns, uncertainties, and discoveries of the past year. She will also speak to the experience of her May residency with us. Intisar is an artist working across photography, dance, and writing, working in long-form projects that encompass the visual, folkloric, documentary, and performing arts. She has produced the People Could Fly project and the Black Portlanders project. You can find registration for information in our newsletter, which went out today, and on the events page at sitkacenter.org. We really hope you'll join us for Intisar's talk. For those of you who are participating live with us on Zoom today, if you have questions or comments for our presenters, please do share them using the Q&A feature on your Zoom menu. I'll do my best to read questions out loud and weave in as many as we can as we go. We have 5 presenters, so we'll do as much of that as we can. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our first presenting resident. Claire Giordano is an environmental artist who creatively tells stories of science, climate change, and the modern experience of nature. Her work was profiled in a 10-page art feature and essay in Alpinist, and her illustrations have appeared in presentations at the American Geophysical Union annual meeting and in the Smithsonian Science Education Center's national curriculum. She has also designed a best-selling t-shirt graphic for REI, perhaps some of you own it. She enjoys creating custom imagery for skis and maps. In the last 2 years, Claire's project, Glacier Portraits, documenting vanishing ice, led her to create paintings in the glaciated peaks of her home state of Washington, in Greenland as an artist and lecturer with Seaburn Cruises, and in Chamonix, where she collaborated with the Research Center for Alpine Ecosystems. Please make some Earth Day noise wherever you are and join me in welcoming Claire Giordano to the Sitka Center.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for that lovely welcome. I appreciate it so much. Can I get a thumbs up from a panelist to make sure you can hear me okay? Awesome. Thanks so much. So thank you. Yeah, it's such an honor to be here and to get to just share with you some of the work I got to create over the month I was at the Sitka Center. So I've been home now for 4 or 5 days and slowly re-entering society. The residency of email responder is now off, so I can't pretend email doesn't exist anymore, which I'm sure we all, when we're on vacation, is such a luxury. And I just feel so incredibly grateful for the time I had at Sitka. It was, I think I went, looking for kind of a creative retreat and a space to create art. And I certainly found that, but I think I found so much more than that. I found a place that helped me kind of wander back home to myself in some ways that I didn't know I needed and didn't know that place could inspire for me. So the work I'm going to share today will be, I'm going to start with a little video that I actually made for my students. So I have 130 students who go on little virtual watercolor adventures with me every month. And it's called the Adventure Art Academy. And I wanted to kind of just like give you guys, I want to share that with you because it kind of shows like where we were and where all of us were actually getting to hang out and create in different capacities. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen and choose that video for you. And the sound will be turned off just because it kind of glitches a tiny bit on my computer. So it'll just be the little visuals you'll get to see. Okay, there we go. And I am back. So let me turn that off. There we go. Yes, there was no audio for that just because it probably glitched a tiny bit already for you guys because it was my computer doesn't like the videos very much. But I hope you enjoyed just that few minute and a half or 2 minutes of kind of getting to see some of the images of where I was. And it finished on a painting, and I'll switch now to sharing my PowerPoint so I can get to share some of the paintings I made with all of you. So this is the painting I ended on, and I made a number of these pieces while I was during my residency with Sitka Center, and they're kind of a holistic exploration of place. So I have everything from the visual explorations to color swatches to written notes, and this one's extra special because I actually filmed the entire process and turned it into a lesson. So for the first time, I actually kind of taught people how to approach a landscape for the first time, and it was kind of magical because in that class, I was learning for the first time how to paint this place too. And it felt really, it felt like a really privilege and honor to get to invite people into that process to kind of see how a painting like this could come to be, and get totally just like so excited about little shorebirds that would wander by and the cool shells I could find while I was hiking and painting. And there's a little close-up, so it's Cascade Head. So it's a formation that kind of dominates the, Sitka Center is off to the right, kind of behind the curve a little bit, but it just dominates your field of view. And it's this amazing ecological reserve. And I thought I'd kind of highlight, I spent a lot of time painting different aspects of that lovely place. And then kind of whenever I was outside, I would do different kind of sketches. And some of them were like the one you saw before. And some were these where I'm actually painting the literal shadows that were cast on my page. And these are so fun because there's not many times in our lives when we slow down enough, I think, to actually observe the movement of the sun. But as I would like to have a paper under a bush, like watching the shadows for an hour trying to paint them, you have to move the paper with the sun. And I think that's just such a cool reflection of, ways to interact with place. And that's one of my big goals as an artist, is to try to figure out, how can I use my medium of note-taking or writing or painting as a conduit for connecting with where I am. And here's a photo of that practice. And it got so windy on some of these days that like I'm still taking sand out of my palette. And there's still sand actually like stuck in the like paint on the paper, which I think is just such a cool thing to get to like look back on. And I hope that sand stays on there forever. It's also like not the most comfortable thing. So I kept like changing position, and people always think that, being an outdoor adventure painter, right, is this big glamorous practice. And I'm like, actually you spend a lot of time like sitting in awkward positions, like trying not to get too stiff and having your legs fall asleep. And, but that's all part of the adventure and part of what makes, practicing my painting skills and my practice outside as often as I can. And once the weather improved, I was out there every single day. When the weather was bad for the first half of the residency, I spent a lot more time looking out my window. And that was actually how this next painting arose. So it was pretty deeply informed by those shadow paintings, kind of the idea of how do you simplify a landscape into something that's, you know, much more kind of condensed and just layers. So this is kind of what arose from that. And this is the view out the window of the McKee house. So that is a big Sitka tree I looked at, you know, all day, every day for a couple, like 2 weeks, it felt like. And I did a whole series of these paintings. So this one here, and these are 2 other ones as well. And I would create some indoors, some outdoors. And it was just such a fun way to get to, you know, approach a painting. And I didn't sketch anything out beforehand, which is pretty atypical for me. Like normally I like to have a roadmap of where I'm going. And for these, I would just put layers of color down and let it dry in between or not dry and see where it would take me. So it became this just delightful immersion into the shapes and forms of what I was seeing. And I obviously focus on the Sitka spruces because they're so unique and different with these branches that just like don't fall down. They just stay there forever. And it was just, I found that shape so compelling and interesting compared to the trees of home in Washington, where we don't really have, where I am, many Sitka spruces. And they're just so pretty. And here's another day painting in the field. So this is at one of the gorgeous ecological reflection sites. So this is the Tamara Keys, I think it might be how you pronounce that one. And it's where they do a lot of research looking at how this landscape right here is recovering from the removal of the obstacles that had impeded the river and the tide coming in and out. And then there's also a control area that hadn't been dammed or diked. So I spent, actually with Mitsu, we both went here together and painted here for about an hour and a half. And this is the result of that time of observation. So another way of kind of, you know, a similar page to the first one I showed, but just looking at, you know, a map this time and kind of zooming in on some grass and also trying a bunch of different brush strokes. So I have a very limited toolkit I can take with me in the field. I could carry more here, but I try to keep it super simple to mirror when I take on a backpacking trip. So I am always practicing with the least materials I'll have at any point during a field season. So it's like, you know, little things like, you know, pushing my brush and kind of spreading it out to be able to capture grasses and just really exploring how I could use my tools as a way to kind of connect with and see the shapes around me more effectively and with, you know, more interest and fun. Here's a little map, and I have just a couple more I'll show. Had a really super windy day, so I had to go hide kind of up the shore. And while I was there, I had the privilege of actually getting to collaborate with Westwind, which is an amazing nonprofit that owns all that land across the Salmon River, 529 acres. And they gave me permission to access their land. There was like a background check involved, like super duper involved process, but so worth it because I got to have a very safe space to spend an entire day outside. And I could access the beach even when it was too windy to kayak across the river. So that's I like this because it reflects kind of the whole scope of where the different explorations took place. Here's another page. This was actually my last day. So I got to just explore again, you know, the whole different landscape and how it was transformed by fog. It became too cold eventually, so I moved back up the beach. I feel like a lot of my life is like painting until my fingers get too stiff and then wandering elsewhere and finding a new location. And then the last one, well, second to last, just another little view of the ocean that I thought would be fun to share on those like rare, beautifully sunny days where like the ocean just looks so blue and the sky looks gorgeous and the grass just has this incredible movement. And this is the last one. This was in the, I think the locals call it, you know, the Eye of the Needle. It's this amazing little cave. I wanted to share this one because I think you might, if you can see my cursor, up here in this zone, you might notice there's quite a difference and there's missing a big chunk of rock there. So this actually fell off overnight. So between the day that I painted and the day I returned, that whole formation fell down. So about, you know, half a fridge or fridge sized amount of rock collapsed. And it was just so fascinating to me to kind of realize like, oh my gosh, you know, my painting is this incredible record of place in a very like visceral and almost emotional way to realize like something I painted is no longer there. And I love that connection. Just to kind of, I think it reflects like how dynamic these landscapes we're interacting with are. And I feel like watercolor and painting is kind of uniquely suited to those observations. And that's one reason why I try to focus on areas of the world like coastal regions where sea level rise and storms are changing things really rapidly, or areas in glaciated regions where you can take a photograph, but there's something so unique about having it, you know, in a painting that I spent, you know, an hour and a half creating, and, you know, hearing tiny bits of rock falling and thinking, okay, I need to move back another 20 feet to make sure I'm like, just for sure clear of that zone. So I guess I'll end on that note of just like how that's I think my 10 minutes. And it was just an incredible experience. And I just feel so grateful, and I will be carrying the kind of creative inspiration and energy. I'll stop sharing now so you can see my face. I'll just be carrying the inspiration from Sitka, I know, for the rest of my life. It really, kind of brought me, out of kind of a creative funk from the last year. It was a hard year for many of us in so many different ways. And thanks to this magical place, I now feel like I'm kind of ready to create again in a way I haven't in a year. And that will be a gift I'll never forget. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire. If you want to keep your mic on, Mike has a question. He appreciates the landscape view overhead and close-up images in one of the works you showed. How do you choose your views?
Oh, that's a great question and such a hard one. It just goes day by day. Like some days I'm in what I'm most interested in. One of the beautiful things about this residency is that, we don't go in with having very specific expectations of what we have to create there. And sometimes when I go with scientists or into research zones, like I know exactly what I have to be painting. Like I have to be painting this glacier and the interaction between this and X, Y, Z, right? But here I could just arrive in a place and be directed by my own curiosity and fascination. And then of course, like the environmental factors determine that a lot. So like the overhead view was a day when it was too windy to be anywhere near the beach. So I was looking at the map on my phone and painting from that and choosing the colors based on what I saw. So I think, it's like both personal interest, and then also I love those field pieces because every single piece of them is just shaped by the conditions around me, and that subject matter is part of that too.
Just a few comments for Claire before I introduce Talmage, but Claire, you can go ahead and turn off your mic. So EJ writes, I really appreciate the combination of watercolor and spatial representation, as well as how you include the palette. Paulina writes, the shadow idea is so wonderful. I love your use of color and lightness in style. And past Ecology resident, Catherine Craig writes, I love your style. Thank you, Claire. Okay. Talmage Doyle is a painter, printmaker, teacher, and public artist whose work reflects on issues of the environment related to climate change. Born in New York City, now based in Eugene, Oregon, she received her BFA from the Cleveland Art Institute and an MFA from the University of Oregon. She has participated in over 150 national and international exhibits, and her work is included in over 30 public collections in the US and abroad. She has participated in artist residencies at UCross and Brush Creek Foundations, Playa Art Science Residency, the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology, and the Kingsbrae International Artist Residency in New Brunswick, Canada. She's also taught at Sitka several times. Recent exhibitions include the Berlin Print Biennial, North American Print Biennial in Boston, and the Atlanta Print Biennial, and also a solo exhibition at the Ogden Gallery in Portland. This fall, her etchings will be featured in the Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka Printmaking Exhibition 2020, and the third international mini print exhibition at Chantabria in Spain. So please make some joyous noise and help me welcome longtime Sitka friend Talmage Doyle back to Sitka.
Hi, everybody. Hey, thank you so much, Allison and Tamara and all the staff at Sitka and the board and the volunteers. People have just been fantastic. My stay here has been beyond perfect, and it's been so fun and glorious. And as you can imagine, I almost forgot there was a pandemic. Not really, but I haven't been listening to the news very much. It's just been amazing. So, and next week, back to civilization. And okay, so I really want to thank the Oregon Arts Commission for granting me an opportunity grant for this year to fund this residency and a body of new work, and also the Ford Family Foundation, a grant from them to pursue a body of new work and present for future exhibitions. So thank you so much. I feel very grateful for all of that. And okay, so let's start with the images. I probably have too many images, so I might speed through. I wasn't sure how long 10 minutes would last. Okay, so this is, I'm starting with the work that I did several years ago, and because that's when I started doing work about water and the ocean. And so during the last several years, I've been really fortunate to have opportunities to participate in artist residencies in several North American locations. And my work has grown directly out of these experiences, as well as concerns for climate change, specifically rising sea levels and ocean warming trends. And I have also an interest in maps, a love for maps and cartography, and how scientific information is expressed through charts and maps, and also how maps and landscapes will change and shift with our shifting climate over time. And okay, so this piece is a sort of a seed piece for my series High Tides Rising. And this is a small etching, aquatint line etching, 9 by 12, right around there. And then I started on these larger pieces. When I went to the Kingsborough International Artist Residency, I was in New Brunswick. I was on the Bay of Fundy, and it was where the highest tide, they say the highest tides in the world happen. And it was just astounding, just watching these tides come in and out, and the weather, there's an electrical storm, and then the sun comes out and the storm goes away, and then it comes back, and just this ever shifting, beautiful climate. We lived in the middle of a 27-acre botanical garden. So you can imagine, the beauty that was surrounding this. So I started, thinking about this garden and thinking about how, it's at sea level, so that it may be underwater in a couple decades, hopefully not. But I started thinking about that, and being around the tides. And so this is a piece. I also started this sort of sub-series called Underwater Garden. So with this piece, you can see, I have a detail of this piece. So you can see see these lines that kind of, these light green lines that sort of stand up on top of layers of woodcut. Those are from a copper etching plate. And as well as this one, you can see the mapping elements here. So I was very inspired by this place, and I hope someday to go back. And another detail, so you can see all the mapping elements here. And these next 3 pieces are small etchings, probably around 9 by 11. And I also had the opportunity to be in Wyoming, and right in 2019 at the Brush Creek Foundation UCross. And at UCross, I started reading John McPhee's book, Onto the Plains. I think I have that title right. And he was talking about the history of geology of the state, and how the whole area of these dry plains used to be a salt marsh like the Florida Everglades. So here I am in the middle of Wyoming in the winter, and I'm doing these kind of images, which might seem, that I'm not being influenced by the environment, but I really was. I was just thinking of sort of layers of time from the past, and then the work sort of evolved. And these are probably about 24 by 36 inches. And so these are multiple layers of monoprint and woodcut, relief print and woodcut, and then hand drawing as well. And I'm kind of speeding through these because I want to get to the work that I've been doing here at Sitka. And what I find from, this is a piece that I've been working here at Sitka on. What I've been finding here, when I do a residency and then I go home, the place stays with me for so long and influences the work in so many ways. And this drawing I started, I have to say, for months before I came to Sitka, I'd wake up every morning thinking about being at Sitka, back at Sitka. I was here 10 years ago, and it just got me through last winter. It would get me out of bed. I just so enjoyed thinking about being back here. And so I started doing these drawings about the ocean, and I was thinking about the phenomenon of the blob. Some of you, I think, know what that is, but it is a warming trend that started to happen in 2013 up off the North Atlantic coast of Canada, and sort of this big blob of warm water slowly moved down the coastline to the US Pacific coast. And so learning more about that and how it affects ocean life, I got very interested in microscopic organisms in the ocean. So as you can see here, it sort of looks like fields of kind of streams of plankton and other microscopic creatures. And I've been experimenting with using temperature with color, expressing temperature through color. And you're probably wondering, well, what are these sort of celestial looking maps in the background? Well, those just sort of popped into my work from, I'd say, about 9 years ago. I did a couple series that involved celestial maps and sort of galactic phenomenon. And it sort of popped in with the ocean work, and I just kind of went with it. There's probably many metaphors to be drawn, from it, but these two sort of, for me, they were sort of two unknown worlds, outer space and the ocean, and they just sort of came together, started to come together. And, I'm not a big, I work fairly spontaneously. I'm not a planner. So I just, I started drawing, and I have a or a painting. This is actually a painting. It's pigment pencils, India ink. And I have a very general idea about what I'm going to be doing. And then it just happens organically as the drawing progresses. And often I'll take photos of my drawings in the different stages, just so I can look at them and see how, where the development is going. And okay, so this is another painting, and it's sort of a combination painting, drawing, but I suppose it doesn't matter what you call it. But I never like to label things mixed media, because that really doesn't tell you anything about the work, in my opinion. It's just like, well, what did you make it out of? So I never like seeing that label mixed media. I want to know, what it's made out of. So these are layers and layers of pigment pencils and India ink and some watercolor. And yeah, I'm just working very spontaneously and experimental, which is really, really fun. It's not like, I've kind of moved away in my art practice from doing edition prints for the last couple years, and into more monoprints and painting. And here we go, that warm blob behind all the plankton. So you can see I'm looking at microscopic images, and Ernst Haeckel is also a big influence. He was a 19th century scientist illustrator who does phenomenal illustration work, and just I think that I could look at microscopic imagery of plankton for the rest of my life and be completely busy, even if I looked at nothing else. I mean, there's so many variations and forms. And one of the things that I find very, very interesting is, looking at these microscopic life forms from the ocean. There are so many similarities in form to what I see, let's see, in Hubble spacecraft photos of phenomenon happening out there in the galaxy in terms of form and light and shape. And so I just find that really, really fascinating. And this is a drawing that I just sort of, I think, finished, who knows, a couple days ago here at Sitka. And I feel like this residency has really allowed me to open up and have freedom to experiment and change and grow into, trying new things, new colors, new formats, new compositions. Something about being in this fabulous place just feels freeing and just kind of frees me up to do what I want. So I think that's it. Those are all the images that I have.
Talmage, I've got just one quick question from clearly your friend, Andy Thrams, who says, hi, Tolly, wonderful to see you and what you've been up to. How do you incorporate the mapping elements into your printmaking process?
Oh, how do I actually draw them, you mean? Or how do I, I'm not sure exactly what she means by that. But I'll try and guess. So I look at maps of the areas where I am, but I'm also, I'm sort of influenced by the reality of what's here, but I very much take artistic license and abstract from maps and extract from maps, reacting to the work in a really spontaneous way. If that makes sense. And let's see. So that's one answer. Sometimes I etch them into copper plates. Sometimes I just draw them with India ink. And I have maps all over my studio at home. I just love them. They could just kind of sink into my psyche. I'm reading a book now about why people love maps, and I just started it. So I haven't really figured it out, but there's a lot of people on the planet that are just insane about maps. And I find that really interesting too.
Thank you so much, Talmage. I'll go ahead and have you turn off your microphone and I'll introduce Jef Gunn. So Jef Gunn was born in Seattle in 1955 and grew up along the West Coast from Puget Sound and Portland to Southern California to Hawaii. He studied drawing and painting in California through the 70s, held residencies in Barcelona and Paris in the 1980s, and since the mid-1990s has engaged in a passionate study of Asian art. Gunn has taught since 1996 at Pratt Fine Art Center in Seattle, Oregon College of Art and Craft, and Pacific Northwest College of Art in Portland, and at the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology here on the Oregon coast. He lives and works in Portland, Oregon, where he now teaches through his First Light studio. And also this October, from the 10th through the 15th, he will be teaching for Sitka a workshop called The Heart of Painting, a week-long master class. And I just checked, there are only 3 spots left. So if Jeff's talk inspires you, which I bet it will, sign up right away or get on the wait list if it fills up tonight. Right now, we are thrilled to have Jef in residence. So please help me welcome Jef Gunn back to Sitka.
Thank you for that introduction. And thank you, Talmage, for a really fascinating trip through. That's fantastic stuff, beautiful stuff. And thanks to everyone at Sitka. This whole brief residency I had just came rather spontaneously. as I was looking for a place on the coast near the Salmon River to do some paintings for a commission that came up in February. And I reached out for advice on places to stay, and Tamara and Allison just said, well, we've got a hole in our schedule. Why don't you fill it? So I had like 3 or 4 days to paint there, and it was enough. The commission came in from a designer, like a, what do you call it, a interior designer working for a hotel that's going in McMinnville. The owner of the hotel is a regular art lover, buyer, and shops at Ogden quite a bit, where Talmage also shows. And so they had requested that, they get in touch with me for a commission. And the theme of the new hotel in McMinnville is around Oregon rivers, which I thought was rather inspiring. I've organized my website for years now, not based on media, but based on land and sky and water and different kinds of water. So I've got, a whole portfolio of just river, and a whole portfolio of what do I call ocean? Something about ocean or mountains. So they contacted me for that, and I immediately thought I want 2 different kinds of rivers, or 2 different rivers in Oregon that appeal to me deeply, that I'm in love with. One is the Crooked River in Central Oregon. I have some slides. Why don't I start the slides? The Crooked River runs north, and it's truly crooked. It winds and winds through canyons, through Prineville, and then famously wraps itself around the foot of Smith Rock. And this is a painting I did some, handful of years ago. Here's a photograph that I took of the Crooked River at dawn at one of my favorite camping spots on the Crooked River. And I was looking for photographs from which I could paint the river. I didn't want to travel out there. That's like 3 or 4 hours drive. And this is one of mine, cropped to this format that they were requesting, which is 40 inches by 30 inches. Most of the rivers I've painted, most of my paintings are horizontals, not vertical. And I had never really thought about that with a river before. So here's one that I did, a study I did from a photograph, 40 by 30. And the trouble I found with photographs, photographs themselves are wonderful, but painting from photographs is awkward, because a photograph is always, whatever else it is, if it's a good photograph, a great photograph, or a bad photograph, or a mediocre photograph, it's always a record of a moment. No matter what else it is, it is that moment, that instant. But a painting is never a record of a moment. A painting is a record of thousands of moments and changes of thought and dropped brushes and mistakes and all kinds of things. It's not a moment. And also a photograph is from one eye. And we have 2 eyes, and they're always moving when we paint. So I realized that I didn't really want to work from a photograph. So my first finished good painting, I think, is this one, which was entirely from memory, which of course is faulty. It's not correct, but it gets the feeling. If I told someone, yeah, that's the Crooked River, they say, oh yeah, I've been there. I know exactly where that is. It's right here. It's right here in my heart. So then the other river I really wanted to paint was the Salmon River down near Sitka at the Cascade Head. And so I reached out to Tamara, and that's when they decided, well, why don't you come out and take a look? Because that one I really had only seen in these, you know, for me, this river is fat and lazy and supine. It just spread out on a sofa like that. So I'd only seen it from the shoreline. So here's another version from that same spot. And I'd never seen it upriver. Couldn't imagine it in a vertical format. So I had to come down and see it. These are some examples of the Salmon River that I've painted on site. But I clambered down there, and the first thing I did was go just explore up and down the area by Night Park and the end of the road, and looked everywhere I could try to find a place where I could make a vertical format. I finally walked from the boathouse down the beach, the rocky beach. It's a dangerous walk, and found a little spot where I can actually see the last hook of the river before it hits the ocean, which I thought was really poetic. And plus there was this reflection in a rock in the foreground that kind of looked back at me. Sometimes when I'm looking for something out in the landscape, I'm waiting for something in the landscape to wave back or to nod and just said, hi there. Just like when you're looking, maybe you're on the street and you look across the street and there's someone and you see them and they see you, and there's this moment of recognition. It's like that. So I was looking for that, and I got that from the rock. So I set up. It started to rain. I couldn't really do much, but this is enough. I got an idea that what I wanted to do back in the studio. And the next day, I put all the gear in a backpack and hiked up to Cascade Head so that I could get the long view down on it looking upriver and get the whole estuary. Anyways, this is a really quick sketch. I hadn't brought my white paint, so I couldn't mix any white paint. So anyways, this is a smudge, but I got an idea, so I know what to do. So this is what I ended up doing over a couple of days in the studio. And this is full size 40 by 30. I needed to make the water in the shallow water there just before that turn. I needed to make it glow, but I needed to make it glow gray. You know that experience, you're down there and it's actually kind of gray, but it's glowing. It has a presence to it. So I mixed a pinkish violet gray and an aqua gray and put them together, and their interaction made them shimmer like that. And then my friend there has this sense of gravity and just sits there like a rock. The horizon is not level. I just put a bunch of colors there and scraped a piece of cardboard across it, and it left that beautiful line that I like that beautiful line. The clouds in the sky I mixed out of just black and white, but I think because of the green, it looks violet. So pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with this one. And this is what I did with the view from up on the ridge, up on Cascade Head. And when I was there, I realized that one of the great things about a residency, I hadn't done a residency like this before, was you run into people, you meet people. And I'm not sure, I think Mitsu was in the studio next door. We waved to each other, but we didn't really meet. But there was a stream biologist, a river biologist named Kurt Fausch there, and we visited every single day. And that was so cool. I really enjoyed it. And we talked about the currents in rivers, and can you see the current, and how could you catch that in a drawing or a painting. So it was really important that I make the currents believable, because I knew Kurt was going to come by and look. So I feel like I did a pretty good job. There was I don't know if I can get the cursor to work. Can you see that cursor? There's this little teeny trail that goes down here and little dot line. You know, in painting, you have to do it symbolically almost. And then there's another current here, and there's another current out here, and there's this current trouble that's going here because there's rocks in the way, and then they continue around like that. He seemed to be pleased with it. Anyways, I'm pleased with all the work. The owners of the hotel have come by and made their selection, and they selected this one, which means the other ones are they'll be showing it sometime at Ogden Gallery in the next, who knows, the next year sometime.
I've got one question just for you about your fall workshop. Am I remembering right? And just correct me if I'm wrong, but is that open to people who work in any painting medium, not just oil painters? Am I right or wrong in my memory?
Yes, that's what I had in mind. I don't know all painting mediums, but I'm trusting that someone who wants a master class knows the painting medium well enough. And we're really going to talk more about what's the spirit behind their painting and how can they get behind that spirit and work with it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jef, for crashing for those days. We're so glad you were able to come and join us and for sharing your work with us.
It's fantastic to have full days in a studio. That's so rare. So hard to get. Thank you.
Yep. I'll have you mute your microphone.
Okay.
And I'll introduce Mitsu. So Mitsu Salmon creates performance and visual works that fuse multiple disciplines. Her work starts with personal or familial stories and branches out to speak to contemporary issues such as diaspora, labor, and the environment. Salmon received her MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 2014 and her undergraduate degree from New York University. She has participated in artist residencies at Taipei Artist Village in Taiwan, Incheon Art Platform in Korea, Guildhall in New York, and PAM in Los Angeles, as well as locally in Chicago at Lynx Hall, High Concept Lab, and the Chicago Cultural Center. So please, wherever you are, we really can hear you. I promise that we can. So make a virtual Earth Day ruckus and help me welcome Mitsu Salmon to the Sitka Center.
Hello. Hi, I am Mitsu Salmon. Salmon, like the estuary around here. And let me know. So yes, it's been amazing being here at Sitka. I never want to leave. It's to have a gorgeous studio and this nature around is wonderful. And yeah, Jef, beautiful work. I was not in the studio next to you. I think I was supposed to be, and then they rescheduled me. I would definitely have come and said hi and bugged you. But so since I've been here, I've been experimenting a lot. I've been looking at working on a piece about orchids, the symbolic, historical, and just kind of like the existence of orchids as both visual work, performative work, writing. I'm going to show it online next month online, and then throughout the summer in Chicago as a socially distanced live performance. And so what I'm going to show you today is just kind of a video where I did a lot of the things that I was practicing and a lot of the ideas with movement, but I was doing it around the landscape here. And then over it, I'm reading text that I have been developing. So dormancy. What is dormancy? We think of it as an unwanted plant or an unwanted time period in our life. Dormancy is thought of as a lull, a latency. I go to water my orchids and they, like me, are dormant, surviving, not thriving. They are not blooming. I am not blooming. All of my performances, gigs, teaching has been canceled. 2/3 of performing artists are unemployed during the pandemic. I am not alone in this latency. A flower is thought to only be valued when it is blooming, and us when we are productive. But with the grief and the loss and the processing, we cannot function the way that we used to. And perhaps that is a good thing. I pick up the book, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Will Kimmerer. She speaks about how it is an exchange with the land, and this at times means allowing the land to be, that by trying to get as many crops from it as a field as possible depletes its nutrients, that we need to let the land lie barren. Dormancy enables its strength. Dormancy. Dormancy allows for new growth. Dormancy allows for reflection. Reflection that hopefully brings about new systems, new ways of being, and that once again there will be blossoms. There will be blooming. In the spring, like the wild orchids, I am beginning to come out of my dormancy. I am offered an online teaching gig, an online residency. I'm even headed to my first in-person residency since the pandemic. My partner and I drive out to Sitka in Oregon from Utah, a 13-hour drive. We stop in Baker City. At the Airbnb, my partner tells me he has some bad news. He tells me about the Atlanta shooting. 8 people dead, most of whom are Asian American women. He looks at me with worried eyes and holds me. But the news doesn't sink in. I then feverishly read articles, friends post, but still it isn't registering. I then pass out at the grandma's decor Airbnb, exhausted from the drive. The next day we arrive at Sitka. Ancient trees, moss-covered ground, many wildflowers, and even the home to an endangered butterfly. The perfect setting to once again bloom and pick up working on the orchid piece. The studio is a dream studio. Wood floors for dancing, wide windows with a gorgeous view of the forest. The first day in my studio, the news finally hits. I just sit there crying, crying. This ongoing debate. Their orchids are 26 or 112 million years old. Mind can't fathom that scope of time. I can barely decipher the differences in weeks in the moment. Well enough a discrepancy of 8 million years old. Botanists from Harvard in 2005 identified the fossilized remains of bee-carrying orchid Pollinea, placing the flower to be at least 85 million years old, coexisting with dinosaurs. What do you think of this debate? Grass? Thank you. Yes, thank you. Huh, good point. I'm looking for the fern, but, oh, there's miner's lettuce. Miner says, what do you think? Interesting. How about you, Fern?
You're
Similar age, you say? Yeah, similar.
What about you?
Sitka? Huh, okay. So, in a sense, these flowers are my ancestors. They coexisted with ferns and dinosaurs. They have an understanding of time and deep resilience that I cannot begin to comprehend. A few months of latency is perhaps nothing to them after you've existed for millions of years. Yes, that's it. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much, Mitsu. We have some comments for Jef that have been streaming in, so I'll just read a few of those. Let's see, I've got Janet writes, your painting of the river make me feel like I am back there. So lovely. Janet was just here in residence with us as an ecologist in residence. Jennifer writes, love your rivers and what you said about not painting from a photo. Your rivers are full of life. And for Mitsu, a comment from Jennifer that reading that book right now, Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. It is so inspiring. Your work is a powerful reflection and so relatable. Thank you for sharing. So thanks, Mitsu and Jef.
Thank you.
Okay, last but not least. In 1972, Lauren Nelson picked up a Deardorff 4x5 view camera and began to organize the world on a 4x5-inch piece of frosted glass. Nelson photographed with film and used a traditional darkroom to produce silver gelatin prints for over 40 years. But recently he has switched to a digital workflow using 35mm digital cameras and an iPhone to move for more spontaneously, to be able to more spontaneously respond to his surroundings, his printing, his images with archival pigment inks on fine arts papers. Portfolios include landscapes, seascapes, botanicals, and under wraps, a series of plastic wrapped buildings. Nelson's photographs are in numerous public and private collections, including the Portland Art Museum and the Hallie Ford Museum of Fine Art here in Oregon, and the Florida Museum of Photographic Arts in Tampa. It's also represented by the Portland Art Museum Rental Sales Gallery in Portland and has been published in View Camera, Lenswork, B&W, and Shots magazines. Make some noise and give an Earth Day Sitka welcome to Lauren Nelson.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, and I need to thank Tamara and Frank and Jane Boyden for making this possible for me to be here, to live and photograph at Sitka for 3 weeks. It's absolutely been an amazing experience. I always go to a photographic situation trying not to sort of anticipate what I'm going to find to photograph, or how I'm going to approach a situation. And no amount of reading or studying or talking to people could possibly prepare me for what I found when I got here. While all of you have been down here in the studios making wonderful artwork, I've been up on Grass Mountain, hiking through the woods, and looking for shade, because all this sunlight isn't good for black and white photography. I've been trying to shoot as early as possible in the day and as late as possible in the evening. And today is fantastic. I finally got out to the beach where Jef was, and I hiked all the way out as far as I could possibly go, and it was fantastic. I have been wandering around with my 35mm camera and my phone, which allows me to respond a little more quickly to the changes in light into my environment than a 4x5 view camera. And so, although I brought the 4x5, it's sitting up in my room unused. But I've been working on a portfolio of new work, and I was so happy to get here during a transitional season where leaves hadn't started to appear yet, and harbingers of spring were just starting to pop out. I love the look of bare trees against forest, and I found the little pond up there too, in the fog, and that was just quite magical. So that was almost dark when I made this image. I was greeted by this field of daffodils, and Tamara and I had discovered one faded batch before we got up for the orientation, and she said, well, it's too bad that those are gone, but here were a whole field of them waiting for me when I got up there. So that was wonderful. I had a chance to actually photograph them over a period of a couple of days before they finally faded. And I love that little tree in the back there. This is sort of what I was expecting to be photographing most of the time. And this is my only image of moss-covered branches. But I was moved by just the way that the light was coming from behind and just making the moss just glow in the rain. That was the first or second day, and I was hoping it was going to rain like that the whole time, or at least be changeable enough weather. This was taken up by the pond as well. I turned around and discovered these shimmering branches against the Sitka spruce in the back. And there was just enough light in the sky to just give it a little bit of a, I think I took this one with the 35mm, so I had a little bit more control over the lighting. But I thought that was rather magical with those new little leaves coming out on the trees. I spent some time walking down by the river house and the boat dock, the boat launching area, and that beach to the right that wraps around the base of Cascade Head. And I love these little swirling plants that were just reminiscent of the currents and the way the water moved them around. I just thought that was lots of fun. This was the first thing that I saw pretty much when I was driving down Three Rocks Road. And I was thinking, well, if we're going to have light like this and clouds like this, we're going to be fine. Well, anyway, that was a fantastic view, and just the various sort of attitudes of these trees just really grabbed my eye. And then this one was blooming up by the house that I'm staying in, and I couldn't believe that it was still all abloom like that. So I set up the camera and got some pictures. This was down by the river house as well, and a big toppled tree skeleton laying there. I was just, I got there when it was raining, and I thought, well, if I go back when that's dry, it would probably look better. But the clouds could not be improved upon, so I photographed in the rain anyway and tried to find as much of the light colored bleached out trunk as I possibly could. And this was directly above that scene, and I loved how how the trees seem to be sort of looming over that area. As I was going into town, I had problems with my brakes on my car, and I had to go into town to have that worked on. And as I drove off of Three Rocks Road onto 101, I turned back and I looked over my shoulder and I thought, well, there are some clouds. That looks awesome. And then there was this hawk that was just coasting up above those trees. And I didn't even get out of the car. I just rolled the window down and got the car into an angle and shot this with my phone, of all things. But I just thought that really said a lot about this area, the beauty of this area, and the fact that you can't really tell what you're going to be seeing when you're here. It just shows up, and it's wonderful. As are the skunk cabbage are starting to spring up all over the place. And there are a couple of places on the drive up to the house that I stop at every single time and get out and go down and see how they're doing. But this one was down on Three Rocks Road, and there was a good acre of skunk cabbage out there that were calling to me. And I always wait for an image to call out to me. Spirit tends to favor patience and a little more introspection. And I like to go into a place and wait for the images to find me rather than going out hunting for photographs. I just sat down really low and that just called out to me. I just couldn't believe how perfect it was. Little spider is in there spinning like crazy. I've been working on a series during COVID. I've been spending a lot of time at old places that I used to go photograph, and Cape Meares and Cape Kiwanda, Hug Point, some places that I would visit back in the 70s and 80s. And going to Cape Meares especially, I find that some of those logs and old stumps and snags that were there in the 70s when I started photographing are still there. And some of them aren't faring quite as well as I think I am, which is kind of a relief. But I've been photographing these little wood details, and I found some wood all up and down the coast below Cascade Head and up towards Neskowin and Pacific City. And so I've been making some new friends here with close-up details. And here are a couple of other ones. I know it doesn't look like wood, but it's kind of refreshing that these are faring as well as they are. Here's another one. Another one. This is up quite a bit north of here, but I just had to include it because it's so cool. So you never know when you're going to find art. And I walked out onto the deck of my house, and there it was, this beautiful, you can tell it's a handmade chair because there are little tiny things that are not exactly the same, not exactly symmetrical, but that sort of caught my eye, and I got right to work making a photograph. So that was, and then the light coming through the trees. I decided that I wasn't going to rail against the sunlight the whole time. I would get out as early as I could and try to incorporate some of that feeling of backlit wonder into my work. This was a very, very foggy night, and I was coming down from exploring up at the little pond, and I just couldn't believe that that these trees were here greeting me, bathed in fog. And so I just set up the camera and made some exposures, and there it is. this was right out my deck door, right out the deck view. And I'd been looking at it, you know, in the sunlight all along, mostly against a bare blue sky. But this was sort of magical when the fog rolled up the hill. And so it gave it a sense of depth and sort of wonder. That's the tree right in front of the Sitka office down here in the parking lot. And I drove in here just to, you know, make contact about this gathering, our show and tell. And I saw that and I thought, well, I better have that too. That's the light was perfect. More wood details. Looked like little eyes. More wood. I thought it was kind of interesting how the smooth pieces of that one wood sort of embrace the sort of rough sections. May lilies are starting to pop up everywhere, and I love them because they look like shades of gray even before you start. So I just got to work and got down on my knees. Another wood detail, swirling waters. Look, yesterday I went out and was stumbling around in the woods. I was looking for the grave marker. Again, I wanted to make some photographs, but I couldn't find it right then. But I did find this log full of fungus next to some sorrel that I just loved. So that's where I spent my time then. And there's one more wood swirl, and that's all I have. I can't believe that this time has gone by already, and that that it's time to pack up and go. But I've had just a great experience, and I would have loved to have met the other artists down here and spent time getting to know you, but I was up there on my little conclave up there in the woods. So, but what a great opportunity. And thank you so much for letting me share my work.
Thank you, Lauren. I'll have you turn off your mic, and I'll just share some lots of comments coming in closing. So for Lauren, Lynn shares excellent work, Lauren. So good to see you. Janet Morrison, who stayed at Grass Mountain just prior to you, Lauren, as an ecologist in residence, shares, "You truly capture the magic of Grass Mountain. Thank you for the beautiful images." Mike, for Lauren, "The variety of textures you capture are amazing. Close-up images almost look like maps or geologic formations." And Jennifer writes, "Earth art at its best. You've captured it." Oh, and one more, D, this is for Jef and Lauren, I think. D writes, "Painters want sun, photographers want shade. Sitka has it all." Jef, Andy writes, "I love your description, Jef, of wandering, looking for a nod from the landscape, the currents painting. Wow." Mitsu, Eliza writes, "I love how you combine your personal narrative reflecting on an experience we have collectively felt with your orchid research. Interviewing the plants made me tear up with delight." Also for Mitsu, "Wonderful assortment." I think that's for everyone. And then for Mitsu, "Love the sounds from the growing plants. There is so much that we do not yet know, so much to learn." Let's see. Dawn shares, this is for everyone. "Thank you so much, everyone, for hosting this, for all of us, and for all the participants spending time showing us your work. Thank you. My sails are filled a bit today by and from all of you." And Linda, I'll just close on this one. Linda shares, "I love how your presentations have inspired me to connect with nature more slowly and closely. Thank you." So thank you to everyone who tuned in today. We had well over 100 people from the Sitka community join us. So thanks everyone for making us a part of your Earth Day. And special thank you to Lauren, Mitsu, Jef, Talmage, and Claire. Like Jef, may your currents always be believable. Like Mitsu, may the miner's grass always give you a good interview. And like Claire, may you always have beach sand in your palate. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Happy Earth Day and good night.